It's a beautifully calm sea out today, however it's a bit drizzly, and we're trying to decide where to go. Do we push the tide all the way down the coast to Woodbridge or Titchmarsh or even the Orwell, or do we go with the tide and run up to Wells? Wells is a fantastic place, but it's massively busy with the holidaymakers over half term, and actually apart from that small harbour there's very little to do apart from the beach, and there's no harbours in between. So do I push south and Woodbridge, the Orwell, Shotley, Titchmarsh, where there's so much more to do and a similar distance to run, but we're going to be pushing tide and that's going to use a lot of fuel? Yeah, where do we go? I've just been having a look back through some of the old logbooks, which I detail the time, the running times, how much fuel is used, positions at sea, and it gives me a really good idea in different current situations how long it's going to take me to get somewhere. I think against my better judgment I'm going to push against the tide today and go south. I think I haven't been to Woodbridge for a long time, but Deben is a beautiful river. Once you get into the river, it's a difficult entrance. And I think that's where we're going to go. And that's our passage planning done. We're all plotted in on the Garmin, also replicated on the other screens as well, and we've got the correct chart on here. I've got most of the approach already plotted in, but I like to have the paper copies of the chart. I'm just going to plot that up shortly as well, and we've topped up with fuel. On these guys you see popping up and down there, Petrans, they do STCW and other water qualifications for professional mariners, qualifications that you need if you go to sea, and I see them quite regularly. They're quite fun to watch. With our chart plotting now completed and Friday night now fully fueled, we made our way slowly down Lake Lothing. The building work on the new third crossing appeared to be progressing well, and then the spans of the Bascule Bridge opened before us. It wasn't long before we passed through the familiar piers of the port onto a nearly flat sea before turning southward on the first leg of our exciting journey. Last little bit of running before we take our approach into the Deben. Got a few fishing boats nearer to shore. We tend to stay a lot further out because of the lobster pots and crab pots and things. And Felixstowe over there in the distance, a big major container port. We may go down closer to that later this week. For our last few miles before we start turning into the Deben entrance, a really tricky entrance and a lot of sandbanks, so you have to get it just right. Another lobster pot. You really got to search hard for them here. There's an awful lot. Always scanning, always looking for the lobster pots. Just coming up a beam, Bawdsey cliffs and the famous radar station at Bawdsey Mannor. where radar in the Second World War was invented. We'll have a look at that as we go in the harbour entrance. Just a tricky entrance now, a tricky journey in, but we've got it plotted out and we'll intercept our course shortly. And that'll take us down into the mouth of the Deben, across the sandbars. And this is why you don't cut corners into the Deben. Just another foot of water and you wouldn't see that sandbank, but you could run straight over it. There's a really good marked channel, it runs along the beach. Just need to be really clear with your passage plan of getting in. Once you're actually on the track, it's well marked down the fairway the whole way down. This is Bawdsey to the right here, Bawdsey Mannor, home to radar. This is where Watson Watt and co did their early experiments with radar in World War II. Radar is not the only secret of Bawdsey. It also houses quite a large bunker. Well, two bunkers. There's an old bunker, then there's an R3 bunker there which was decommissioned in the early 90s. On the other side here is Felixstowe Ferry, and this is part of old Felixstowe. The ferry boat inn, the Martello Tower and the Yacht Club. Great pub, good place if you can get a mooring on one of the fairways just to go ashore, but we're going to carry on up the river. And along comes the dreaded rain again, just as we're coming up to Ramsholt. Next up is Woodbridge. Another great pub. Really is a wonderful river, the Deben. Fantastic, really wide. Looks like it's capable of taking a lot of boats, but shallows out very, very quickly towards the edges as the water drops. But Woodbridge, another great stop if you can find a buoy, and some great walks around there as well. Another slight deviation, here we go pretty much southward towards Martlesham Creek before we then turn right to avoid the shallows on the Deben as we come into Woodbridge. It can be difficult to spot the channel marker buoys, but just there you'll see the port side marker, and you'll see the green over there in between those boats. So if we stick on the fairway, that'll take us nicely round the channel, and the speed limit reduces now, so just going to slow our speed down a tad as well. The yacht harbour is located just behind the tide mill, but you must make sure that you get there with sufficient time to get over the sill. Normally that's between an hour and a half before and an hour and a half after high water, because as you can see from our aerial photos that we took just a short while later, the Deben empties very quickly and you may struggle to get a deep water berth. But we were tied up and we were looking forward to getting into town, having a look at some of the history of Woodbridge and having something to eat.
Leaving the harbour on foot, the first building you find is the tide mill. A tide mill is thought to have existed on this site from the mid-12th century. Ran by Augustinian monks, it was confiscated by Henry VIII before Elizabeth I finally gifted it at a very low price, along with many other buildings in Woodbridge, to Thomas Seckford. It's a great museum, by the way, and it's well worth a visit. As you walk further along the historic quay, Woodbridge has become home to a number of chacks, barges and other vessels, some of which are incredibly interesting. And there's also an Aladdin's Cave for all boaters and yachties. I'm pretty certain this little seagull engine, if it ever did turn, wouldn't turn that propeller. It's just awesome. It's really easy to see that Woodbridge had an important maritime history, but after our sea journey we also felt we needed to walk across the road and quench our thirst before walking further into town and finding out a little bit more about Woodbridge. We decided to carry our journey on, walking into town and visiting the Shire Hall, one of the fine buildings that Thomas Seckford gifted to Woodbridge and the people that lived there. Whilst the upper floors were used for judicial purposes, the lower floors were used for a corn market and even had its own jail. And this is the steering wheel which the whole of Woodbridge is steered from. If you didn't keep this wheel centred, the whole of Woodbridge would just steer off course and end up somewhere near Holland. Of course we knew it was a pump really, but we were drawn to some organ music that we could hear playing from just behind the market square, and down a short alleyway we found the absolutely beautiful St Mary's Church. The church was beautiful and the music captivating, but there was one other aspect of Woodbridge we needed to explore. During the Napoleonic era, Woodbridge had had one of the largest garrisons in the UK, with its barracks covering some 56 acres. And it was in this pub, the King's Head Inn, that there was one very special room. There are many stories about the Napoleonic soldiers who visited the pub over the years, and it may even be haunted, who knows. However, it was only right and fitting that this is where we were going to have our dinner, and we tucked into the most amazing pie. It was fantastic. After dinner we decided to take a slow walk back to the marina, where we made a further discovery about Woodbridge. It seems to have a really large number of really lovely pubs. We finally made it back to find that somebody had stolen all the water from the river. It was a strange sight. And then the heavens opened, leaving this most amazing rainbow. That's got a name, isn't it?
Yeah, double rainbow.
We really had such a wonderful time in Woodbridge. It's a beautiful town and I'd encourage anybody to visit. But we'd decided already that we'd be moving on the following day. Join us in part 2 where we continue our journey down the River Deben. We find an absolutely stunning mooring, see the most spectacular sunset, and finally we tell the tale of an ill-fated B-17 crew.